Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, top law firms, green energy companies, and more. Today, we are joined by Skye Bioscience CEO, author of Catapult, lifelong athlete, Ironman competitor, and philanthropist, Punit Dhillon. Punit, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Matt.
Thanks for coming on. Before we get too far into it, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Cyberlinks is a complete technology solution provider that ensures your business not only has the most reliable and professional IT service, but also has the right cybersecurity solutions to ensure your business stays productive and safe. And now back to our show. Punit, again, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, so I don't know where you want to start. I think we were in the pre podcast. We were talking about a lot of different topics.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate. It looks like you're interested in kind of the overall journey of an entrepreneur and the stuff that keeps me having some huge motivation in life to keep getting out of bed early in the morning.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because so I got your book, Catapult. I actually found it fantastic. I personally really like self-help books. I love business books, and I love how you've kind of brought it all in together. And I think you hit a lot of topics that a lot of you brought a lot of things together. I mean, seriously, it's just packed. So you mentioned things like purpose and motivation. So I'm going to ask you. You hit on it a lot in your book. So if you could, tell us your take on how that works with that kind of internal purpose and motivation to keep getting you out of bed.
Yeah, so that book, the genesis of the book was a time point in life where I was trying to synthesize what I'd learned from my career in life sciences, and also the takeaways that I've had from the athletic, the enjoyment I've had with endurance sports. Endurance sports, you spend a lot of time doing some solo reflection because in long runs or cycling or swimming, I've done a lot of different triathlon events. There was certainly this correlation between that hard work that goes into training for events and preparing for that, as well as, naturally, I think there's a lot of people that have used that thesis of that hard work that is the framework for that type of effort, like brick by brick, when you're training for something, is similar to the entrepreneur world or building a new business. So the idea was to pull that learnings and put some structure around it. I certainly got inspiration from Ray Dalio's book, and his book was called Principles, and I was like, well, yeah, that's a good way to look at the world. Like, what are my principles that if I was to tell the young 20-year-old version of myself, what have I learned? This was a moment in time in terms of really documenting that. And in fact, it wasn't meant to turn into a book. It just then translated into, because I got really obsessed with the process of it. Putting structure around it. Then when I was speaking to a few people and friends and my wife, it then inspired me to take it even further. And part of it was the work that I do on the philanthropic side with the Yellow organization and seeing that, okay, well, there is an audience for this kind of material, because a lot of people would maybe be interested in hearing from someone that's been trying to do the kind of the natural hustle that comes with the entrepreneurship world, and how they might be looking at those decisions earlier on in their life. So that was the key part of the framework in achieving kind of the ideal principles that work with this correlation between resilience that you learn from the athletic world I took it up a notch where I tried to build the importance of purpose, like you emphasized. That's been a big part of what I think uh, have had a better appreciation for in the last decade of my career, is that your certain amount of joy that comes out of work around the joy of fulfillment around the work that you're doing, and having alignment of what that purpose is. So it seems to be very baked in with life sciences, because you're working on drugs that are addressing an unmet medical need. So there is certainly this altruistic side that comes with the business of life sciences. But a lot of people, can't don't have that same opportunity. You could be working in another industry where it's not as apparent. And certainly, even in life sciences, there are challenges that come up in life sciences where you're sitting there pulling your hair out and trying to figure out, how are we going to address that obstacle. So that journey of having it purpose driven is really leveraging some of those challenges, obstacles, to learn from that resilience to move that needle further. And that was a big part of implementing some sort of work plan for an entrepreneur, or in the book we're going to categorically call them the corporate athlete, to uh, define that for themselves. So I tried to define that into a few pages of what took me, I think, years to better appreciate, and I'm still, uh, you know, still working on appreciating that.
That's great. Well, I mean, that kind of brings me to my next question about ikigai. So I thought that was a great, portion of the book. I mean, honestly, there were probably 100 portions of the book. I mean, we could spend hours of
Yeah,
just diving in, but I'm going to try to limit. Can you, let me just ask you, what is ikigai?
yeah. So yeah. Thanks for touching on ikigai, Matt. The ikigai is certainly a big part of alignment with purpose. So this is a Japanese term, and uh, um, it's a good example of a, I guess a reason for being, in terms of the way that it's. I think the direct correlation or the direct definition is. And there was an interesting case study of like these people that are from Okinawa that had a longer lifespan, and I think there's a term for this where it's called the green zones around the
Yeah.
world, and there's a certain lifestyle that fosters a much uh, stronger correlation with people living longer and having a stronger definition of purpose. Ikigai is this whole satisfaction and homeostasis, I would call it, with um, satisfaction of having like uh, 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 confidence in what you're doing, the comfort around your profession. You are in line with your passion and your mission, and it's a lot of like uh, what do you call concentric circles that
Yeah.
create that homeostasis. So it seems like a very complex formula when you look at it on the book. I have simplified it in the book to be broadly defined as purpose. And the simplest way to think about purpose is, what do you identify with to really motivate yourself to feel fulfillment and motivate yourself to get out of bed. And I outline the structure in the book to do a kind of a workflow of doing that. There's a set of questions that a person can ask themselves to help put kind of the raw data points, and then work through the data points to then help yourself identify with a purpose statement. And then once you have a purpose statement, then use that in a constructive way to outline a plan. It sounds very like categorically, okay, you're turning something that should be just naturally bringing you joy into a Gantt chart. But I
Right.
think that there is a component of deliberateness that is required. And Ikigai, I think, is a good example of the deliberateness around that. Here is a culture in Japan that is living long and a happy life, and they have been very purposeful in terms of that joy that they get with family and friends and community, and that um, um, structure that they've established in terms of what they love and their profession and the happiness and passion and other things that they're enjoying that brings the most out of that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really fascinating because, you hear all these studies where they'll say like, they find that part of longevity, especially, as we get into those older years is the quality of the relationships you've had kind of throughout your life and at the later stages. So if you've been a bit of a hermit, the odds of you living to be, 80, 90, 100, not very good.
No.
But if you've got if you've had a great, relationship with your family, you're tied into the community. These people live these, kind of fuller lives. This kind of embodying ikigai, which it was foreign to me until I, heard about it in your book, and then as I started looking into it, seems that it's a pretty great concept that kind of breaks that down. To kind of include all of that. It's not just relationships, but and you do a great job breaking it down in the book, piecing together all of these different aspects of your life. And if you will, kind of, I know it's like you made that joke about the Gantt chart, but it's true. You kind of do have to engineer your life to
Yeah.
be, you can't, and you can't expect your car to work if somebody didn't engineer it, right? So
Well,
things have to be engineered.
yeah, because that's the challenge I feel like in today's society when like I also put an example of Maslow's hierarchy in
Hmm.
the book, right? And Maslow's hierarchy is a great baseline: food, shelter, clothing, or what are the key needs. So in today's society, most people that are working, they can fulfill those components. So it becomes very clear very soon that, okay, you met your basic needs. So where do we go from here? And there's another author, David Brooks, that had talked about this in terms of I think it's called the second mountain, where, a lot of your first part of your life, you're focusing your energy to check off the boxes. You're getting yourself through school, you're establishing yourself in your career, you're maybe doing post-secondary or other graduate studies, and then perhaps family, and then buying a home, maybe having kids, like getting a car. Like there's like this automated checklist. I can certainly agree that in today's society, there's a little bit more fluidness around that.
Hmm.
Certainly, but when I was growing up, I think that was pretty much ingrained in terms of that's what you do,
Yeah.
and that's a little bit different than how we've been very open with. I have kids, and we've been um, uh, like seeing how they independently kind of think about their own stages in life. But once you've checked off those so-called boxes, then you have to kind of try to define for yourself, well, what's next, and this is where purpose and wanting to have another reason or like that structure we're talking about, or deliberateness around the next stage of growth for yourself has to be there. And it's almost requiring the same amount of pressure. It's not like you take your foot off the gas pedal. You put your foot on the gas pedal in different ways that are challenging you to try something. It may not be that you have to worry about going to classes anymore or school, but you might want to still have personal growth in different ways. Maybe you will enroll in a class to further education, or help yourself in ancillary education to help you with your career. These are all important characteristics of the next quote needs of life. So that Maslow's hierarchy is a good reminder that we are pretty self-fulfilled, and we have to then adapt to pushing ourselves into the uncomfort zone. And that's why this concept of the high, it's the nomenclature in some of the things I used in the book is
It's
the
pretty cool. You use the corporate athlete high performance trapezium,
yeah, it
the
was a little bit
CAPT,
of a,
right?
yeah, I'm not a marketing genius, but that was certainly
I
the
liked
best
it.
the best way I can characterize this into something.
And I liked it because it really did kind of modernize, because I think we all have, kind of grew up with that, the idea of Maslow's, hierarchy of needs. And I think everybody kind of relates to that. But I think it was, maybe for an earlier time, and now it's a little oversimplified. I think you did a great job bringing in the, this new idea with this trapezium that you put in the book, to kind of modernize it. And how does this apply to us once you've established those basic needs? Well, what's the higher stuff? How do you do that? And I think that's why we have so many kids now with, anxiety problems, and people have, the level of comfort you get just just being, let's assume that most people who are listening and watching to this are in the United States. I mean, the level of comfort that they have, even most of the very poor people in the country, they live it's 1% compared to the rest of the world. People who are poor in other countries, it's tough. So you're on such a higher level, even when you're on a low level in this country, that I think that, there's not enough education of what you're trying to get across in the book on how you can proceed in life, and the things you've got to be kind of working on and designing for yourself. So I really love that about the book, that you really kind of give people this practical step-by-step kind of guide to kind of move them in the right direction. Be like, oh, okay, let me answer these questions and go. Yeah.
Yeah, and the tools available, like that's why the athletic side was an important it was an important tool available for people to feel the stress, to put themselves into the stress place. Maybe it's physical capacity, so you're increasing your physical capacity, which by nature of just doing that, you're applying expansion of your mental capacity. You might need to bring in more emotional awareness in order to take those steps, and those are immediate tools where you're recognizing, let's call it growth, that then is an example of how that can be translated in other aspects of your life that are maybe non-athletic. So there's the learning of the resilience that comes with the direct correlation with athletics to real world, day-to-day business or other examples. Now, I'll say that since I published the book, I've also experienced the inverse of that, where I've had a better appreciation for the challenges that come across at work and new obstacles. I've been busy working on restructuring the company over the last few years, and we finally have hit our mark on, and we're moving along on drug development at a pace that we're really confident about and comfortable with now, compared to where we were maybe a year ago, where we came across certain delays and certain obstacles that were completely outside of our control. It just knocks the wind out of you. And then learning from that, and then I think applying the awareness of resilience that you learn from that example. So it was a very clear correlation of athletic resilience translating into the so-called boardroom or corporate world. The inverse is also true about the corporate resilience translating into other aspects of your life, and even maybe back into athletics. So it is a very cyclical or correlated component. So the corporate athlete high performance trapezium is one structure that is available as a framework. But I think everyone deserves to take the time to develop the framework that's important for them. And you hit on a very important point about the comfort of an individual being comfortable in their own skin about that. So there's this component of the authenticity and accountability that individuals have in their own personal development. A lot of times in the corporate world, I think we are trying to impress others or working towards recognition and other things that are for someone else's benefit, and forgetting the individual, like introspective look of why that's important for your own personal growth. And that is just, I think, societal, that we have to address separately. But one of the important things I have tried to emphasize in the book is coming back to the accountability you have within yourself. Again, going back to purpose, it only helps to build the confidence, and it is then could be leveraged in the workplace. And I was just finishing a article that I was writing recently on this concept of busy work. Like, people are obsessed with being busy in this society, and I think it has a huge like kind of negative correlation with you know sorry, the just people spending too much time trying to rationalize busyness, and like
Sure.
just the modern society is, like, I think, put it on us, like, knowledge with technology, and just the way capitalism is, like, the need for productivity. And there's been this, like, over glorification about somebody trying to impress upon, oh, I'm busy with this. But I feel like there's different types of busyness. There's, like, the low task type of busyness, and then there's the deep productivity side. And unfortunately, people's obsession with being busy has had a negative correlation, I think, and it ends up, unfortunately, putting other consequences on terms of work-life balance, or relationships, or overall well-being. And in fact, it actually thwarts innovation, it thwarts creativity and productivity. So people, like, I believe that if somebody's just authentic about what they need to achieve for themselves with regards to their work performance, their own measurement of performance that's aligned with the work environment that they're in, that's aligned with their manager, that is going to be way more beneficial for all parties, because there's no, like, uh, confusion, or there's no facade around that.
Yeah, I
It's
think that hits on a few points that you kind of hit on in the book, and I subsequently saw a study they did. It's this intrinsic versus extrinsic
Yeah,
motivation, right? They
yeah,
did this study with these little kids, 5-year-olds who like to draw, and they gave them this external motivator, like, I don't know, a cookie or whatever it was,
yeah,
and they found that the kids, even though they all like to draw, once they got it, once the motivation was coming from the outside, the performance and everything nosedived. Which, for most business people, we think the opposite. Let me just throw some more cash at it. Let me motivate you with a pay raise, a bonus, a new set of steak knives, right? A new car, whatever it is,
yeah.
right? And we think that's the key, but it's really not. It turns out that that's counterproductive. And so what you talk about in the book on getting to the real purpose of it, and what you were just talking about with getting people to assess their own, what should I be focused on? What should my goals be for myself and for the company? You don't hear that every day. And another thing that I think was really great that you threw in the book, going back to that whole, we've got this, I think, a society that is quick to conflate movement and and action with progress, because they're completely different. You could spin around in your chair all day,
You
but
could, yeah,
you didn't get anything done. You got dizzy, right? And that's
yeah.
happening all day. And our iPhones help us, not to ding an iPhone, but technology really helps us, be very active, but not necessarily going in a very, in concrete direction.
Yeah, like, I am certainly a proponent of this idea of hard work pays off, but hard work in a productive sense is a is not a it's a measurement of output, not just, like, just spinning your wheels, right? That's what it needs to be clarified, and that output is its own measurement.
Yeah.
The other thing about technology is that I think that there is great opportunity now with the way that new productivity tools are are in a great place to be adopted to help improve efficiency. So you're kind of eliminating some of the simple tasks that could have been so-called busy work and a big time suck that takes you away from being in your more purpose, self-fulfillment realm. And so hard work is an important part of it. I think that the book also, keeps emphasizing this aspect of resilience or this aspect of adversity to help fuel the next set of expectations. So I do believe in that, because I think that that's the way that people can, expand and contract that's necessary. You have to go through that stress test in order to really take it up a notch or go to the next bar. That's the way that growth really happens. And and just like in athletics, you have to endure a bit of pain or hard work to grow. It's the same thing that has to be applied in the corporate world. And that's the only way as a society we're also going to see that next evolution. So technology is in a great place where you can adopt some great tools now to help you with productivity. You have to be willing to take that leap to get out of your comfort zone, and hopefully it frees up a bit of space and mental capacity to then to take a step back. I don't have to be I don't have to be showing the world how busy I am. It's more about how I feel comfortable in my own skin to be able to perform and produce the output to get to the goals that I want to see in growth. And that's then aligned with the corporate environment, the collegial environment. And if you're a student it's certainly, there in the way that the most infrastructure is in academics. So
Well, and
I think that's the way that we're still going to see that progress on the technology, on development, on these other challenges that the world has. Like, I've put that framework at the last chapter. There's like 5 themes that I think that we can push the gas pedal on, but you have to be willing to be curious to actually make a difference in those areas.
yeah, and I think that's really tough. I think that you hit on a couple of things. One, I think that people are so as a society, we hear this kind of rise and grind kind of motivation that, wake up, early, don't get more than, I work on 4 hours of sleep. The hell you do. Okay. Yeah. Some people do. There's some, weird, sliver, outliers who, yeah, it's funny. When I was in the army, I worked for a guy who got into he got into an accident in the army, had a head injury. And afterwards, he only needed like an hour and a half of sleep a night. It was
Wow.
total freak anomaly, right? And from this point on, he was just nobody could keep up with him. I mean, how
Yeah.
can you you just can't, right? So yeah, you get people like that. But when you get all these motivators, like people on Instagram and everything saying, I only sleep 4 hours a night, giving this impression that they're, some sort of superhero. And
Yeah.
and so it intimidates people. And I think a lot of people internalize that and be like, well, I can't. They try it for a little bit, they burn out, and then they think something's wrong with them. And you talk about it really clearly in the book about, and from an athletic perspective, if you go to the gym and work out 12 hours a day, from couch to 12 hours a day, first of all, and you keep working the same thing every day, you're not going to get improve. You're going to destroy
Yeah.
your muscles. It's ridiculous. You got it. You really emphasize the recovery nicely in the book. So, and I think people don't get that. So can you tell us, kind of, pulling this all together with the recovery aspect, how does
Yeah.
that apply? Because you do a great job in the book. How does recovery as an athlete, how does that apply to recovery, as a human, as a corporate athlete? How's that work?
Yeah, that's a good point. So, like, I in the book we emphasize this concept of I think adaptation generally. So your body in athletics has a way to um, have a natural ability to cope with stress. So so in athletics, you're kind of mobilizing the resources, your different energy systems to get through a certain phase. You're pushing yourself into new zones in order to adapt to the stresses that are available in those zones. but you physiologically, you have certain thresholds. You can only deplete so much of your energy reserves before you're tapped out. You have to take in new consumption in order to do that. So you're building on all that, and at the same time, the body does a really good job of adapting to this. So this is the general kind of adaptation phases, and we don't know that in the work environment really well, obviously, because people just end up going work, and then realize that they're going into burnout territory, and there's not a natural way for your body to shut off. Yeah, if you don't eat, you're gonna obviously feel that, but certainly it's it's a different energy system that you're relying on your day-to-day work versus if you're going to go run 10 miles. You're gonna know exactly when you're in your exhaustion phase when you're running 10 miles versus working for 10 hours straight without drinking any water or eating any food. So that's the key part of it, I think, is redefining success in the workplace and challenging, these day-to-day norms that people have established for themselves with a structure that is aligned with how they're going to be most productive. And what we learn from athletics is a good structure that if you're doing 3 weeks of building, okay, and then it leads to 1 week of recovery, it's a similar model that we apply in work. It's just called different things. In the work environments, it's the quarter. Each quarter is your financial review, or each quarter is your performance, your overall departmental reviews or organizational kind of metrics review. Every quarter there might be a board meeting. Every 4 weeks there might be a management meeting. There's so many different other similarities and analogs that we can apply in these different things. It's up to the individual to then take that and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to be setting myself up for that success. I think the accounting team or the finance team does it best. In a public company, they have to meet critical deadlines that are set by the SEC. And when they meet that deadline, they also take a couple of days off because they work tirelessly to get to that year end or that quarter deadline. And then so every group and every organizational structure, I think, has their own way of redefining that. Yes, there's a certain automatic physiology that happens when you're in training. We have to learn how to build that safety net, safety test, or safety toggle for your body in the work environment.
Absolutely. So you mentioned in terms of the sleep, how you go about it, and you're notorious. You've been waking up since 5 a.m. forever, and that's just how your body's set, right? Which is great. But
on that note, I would say that hasn't been that consistent recently either for me. I've had challenges. I don't know if it's because of daylight savings or whatever. My alarm still goes off, but there's like 2 days this week that I wasn't able to wake up on that time. But I do like that pattern, and it's something that you can certainly get into a habit on. But there's so many different factors. Like I had a proposal that I had to complete earlier this week, up till late at night. I mean, I'm not going to wake up at 5 a.m. that morning on 4 hours of sleep. That my body's not going to function. Your age and other things are factors in that. But that structure has certainly been a key thing for me. It works for me. It doesn't work for my 13-year-old. It doesn't work for my wife. Everyone has their own way to, and that's perfectly normal. Like I think that I've been one of those people that I like that early start thing, and for me, it's a good time because nobody else is bothering me. I can get my workout in, and I don't have any interruptions. Other people like doing stuff like that later in the day.
Well, I like that you normalize the sleep and not just rise and grind and you hear The Rock. He's like, I got he's up at posting at 2 a.m. and he's like, then he's up at 4.
Yeah.
It's like, really? I mean,
Yeah,
how many
like
drugs are you taking that you can do this, right? I mean, come
well,
on.
yeah, his workouts on Friday nights like really depressed me because I was like, because I really enjoy like the Friday night for me is my holy night where it's the one night where I like to just unwind, usually go and watch a movie with the kids or play games or just something chill. And then whenever I see his post on working out on Friday night, I'm like, should I be working out? Like, like his workouts are just so extreme.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah. So I try to get my workout in on Friday mornings, not Friday nights.
Well, it's funny because you see, all these superheroes in movies and all these people on Instagram are like, it's just diet. You got to get your diet and exercise right. I'm like, okay, first of all, okay, not with a body like that. It's not diet. I mean, yeah, once you've got, the right steroids, then it's diet after that. But come on. But you talk about diet in there. So I want to touch on that real fast because yours was, you're eating health. What do because you've gone through and done the competitive stuff here. And now while you're running a business, so that for the corporate athlete who's not, also maybe doing a marathon or ultra, what do you recommend in terms of diet? What should somebody be looking for there?
Okay, well, this has evolved for me over the years because I've tried a lot of different things, and when I'm in training or if I was training for a long endurance event, then it gets really dialed in for some very specific things. But I've noticed that that's never you can never maintain that over a long period. So certainly at this point in my life, it's a lot about moderation. I have a like really big sweet tooth. Anyone that hangs around with me knows of my sweet tooth. I think I've made it apparent that I like chocolate chip cookies in the book. But the thing that I've gotten comfortable with is this idea of like don't diet and just work on moderation and try to avoid refined sugar. I think that those are the kind of the basic rule. Try to avoid processed foods and refined sugar. If you can make your own meals, that is going to be a good way for you to have that check and balance in. I do have a structured meal plan that I try to live to today, and that is I think works well for me, and it's been adapted for what I need in order to continue to train, continue to maintain my health. But I will say it certainly has evolved because I'll obviously still indulge and I don't really drink, so that's an easy one for me. But my sweet tooth is around chocolate chip cookies and ice cream, and that's where I have a certain weakness. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, but the planning ahead is the key thing. It's been the biggest challenge. Is like I learned like if you do your meal planning and you just get into a routine around that, it just makes a huge difference. And it saves money. You're not eating out,
For
5
sure.
times.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.